welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. We're examining the Gioco piano for a few games to give us a feel for the different variations. We've seen several instances now in several games where black has trouble castling. What happens when white neglects to castle? This is an interesting, instructive idea. Let's get to the basic, typical Gioco piano position. The knight and the knight, and the bishop does the dance with the bishop out to here. And bishop, bishop, 4, bishop, bishop, 4, and then the pawn is pressed to c3. And that's actually rather typical. The bishop drops down to the knight 3 here to b6. He's going to keep this angle here. Granted, he's not preventing white from castling, but he's going to keep that line. And of course, white always wants to push that pawn queen 4 because it's a central thrust. Now the queen comes up here in front of the king, and the Müller attack is to keep pushing that queen pawn. What that's going to do is dislodge this knight. This knight can't come into here or here, not safely anyway, or to here, so he only has one of two places to go, and he drops back to here. So you can see white, with the way he's playing, is pushing the black development back. At this point, white has the greater space and the greater development. But like Silman says, development is a temporary situation. If you don't keep trucking, you can fall back behind in development. So, and the knight goes to queen 1, and then bishop comes back to king 2. The pawn comes up to queen 3. He's opening the way for this magnificent white squared bishop for black. White wants to prevent the bishop from coming into here. He can't come into here or here. So this more or less just limits this bishop's influence, right? So that's kind of interesting. But it's not the best move. He should be castling. Now he's bringing in, now you can see that black is beginning to gain territory here. Bishop, king, knight 5, he's going to come and directly challenge the queen. He brings out the knight to stop the queen threat. You notice black is slowly starting to develop more and more. See, development is only a temporary thing. White's continuing on marching, however. Finally, black gets to castle. Now, in the other games we saw that white got to castle, but white seems to be ignoring that option, and now black has castled. This has serious ramifications for the game. Knight to rook 4. The pawn's going to take the pawn. The black pawn takes the pawn, and now the white knight takes the pawn. And notice what he does. He uses his knight to take the knight. And it's a very interesting maneuver that sacrifices the queen. But look at the effect that this maneuver has. Now granted, he gave him the queen, and of course, white is going to take the queen. However, because of his development, and because of the placement of this central knight, he can now come down here with the bishop and put the king in check. The king comes to bishop 1, and now the knight goes knight 6, checkmate. A beautiful fork that leaves that king helpless. So in the Giuoco piano, things can go either direction. If you're playing an opponent who doesn't recognize if you're playing the Giuoco piano, it seems to me, based on the games we've seen so far, that the importance of castling fairly speedily and hurriedly is quite important in this opening, because lines attacking the king can open up either side very fast because of the way the pieces are placed. So there's your first game. Let me get to a second game on this video. This second game is a game by Ilya Khan and Mikhail Botvinnik. This was the Soviet Championship in 1929. This is out of the book by Grandmaster Lev Albert and Larry Parr, The Secrets of the Russian Chess Masters Volume 2. This is really kind of an interesting game because what they're doing is it becomes the Evans Gambit. And so you'll get a brief look at the Evans Gambit if you've never seen it. The pawns come out, the knights come out, the bishops come out, but at this point, White springs the Evans Gambit on him. He pulls out his B pawn challenging the bishop, and the bishop drops back. If you take that pawn, you're accepting the Evans Gambit, and there's all kinds of beautiful, interesting, wild, weird tactics. Maybe I'll do an Evans Gambit. Granted, the Grandmasters more or less have refuted the Evans Gambit, but every now and then, if you throw that in there and someone unwittingly accepts that gambit, if you know what you're doing, again, the more knowledge we have in openings, the funner chess becomes, right? So we're just learning here. It's really kind of cool to do that, in my humble opinion. Well, he is obviously bringing up his queenside pretty quick in this game. He goes to A6. And now he pulls out his knight. Ilya pulls out his knight. Botvinnik, not a world champion yet. This is a very young Mikhail Botvinnik playing here. Knight D5. Look at that centralized knight. Now you notice who has the more space. One of the imbalances. The queenside space definitely belongs to Ilya. And the center space definitely belongs to Ilya. The development at this point really does belong to Ilya. It's pretty good. He is really cramping black. You get the impression that black is really getting tight. So of course, black wants to begin to expand to flex out, and that typical classic taking the king pawn here. Ilya castles. Remember, Botvinnik is only 18 years old when he played this. Isn't it interesting? Botvinnik at 18 years old is playing in a Soviet championship against a much stronger grandmaster. It's very interesting, isn't it? And now, Botvinnik castles. And there's a question mark here. They're saying, really? That might not be a good move. Khan recommends either D6 or the knight back to F6 instead of the castling. We'll see. D3, he brings in the pawn and he pushes the knight back to F6, but now you've got this to contend with, and you're going to open up the bishop. But rather than worrying about that, now we've got this other bishop on G5 pinning the knight to the queen, and now you can begin to see a crossfire going on. So this is kind of getting difficult for Botvinnik. This was a good lesson for a young 18-year-old Botvinnik to learn. Now he does bring up the D6, but it's too late. The damage is done. The knight comes back down here to D2. He's threatening to play knight to E4, which is really strong here. See, when the knight's not doing anything here, I mean, yeah, you're standing there and you're attacking the pawn, but the pawn is covered. That's really not going to help his purpose. So when one of your pieces is not fulfilling the purpose, feel free to move it, because now if he can get up into here, you can begin to see this piece is triple attacked. It's on the king side. It's one of the defenders of the king side, and then there's going to be a great attack. So it's okay at this point in the game to readjust your pieces by moving them 2 or 3 times, especially the knights. That's another Jeremy Silman concept that he talks about very, very strongly. So this is interesting. Well, now Botvinnik recognizes, holy cow, I really have to get something drumming up here. So he's going to try to start doing a counterattack against Khan. And it doesn't work. Khan goes ahead and takes F6. The queen's going to go to C8. The knight is going to take B6, that bishop. C takes b6. That pawn takes that knight. He's going to bring up this to get rid of that bishop. Bishop's going to pop back to e6, which is somewhat of a protecting move. He's going to stop him from the direct attack. The bishop comes down here to h4. Knight's going to take b4. He's trying hard to get a counterattack going here. And now the bishop comes up here to e7. Wow, that's a great fork. Number one, you're attacking the base of the pawn chain. The correct way, Nimzovich showed this long ago, the correct way to defeat a pawn chain is attack at its base. And he's going to start moving the defenders over. He's trying hard to pry open this king side one way or the other. That's what he's actually doing. Well, watch what Botvinnik does. He brings his queen out, check to the king. He's going to virtually force the king away from the center further down here in the corner, right? And now, whoop, is that right? No, rook f to e8. He moves his rook. He's going to challenge this bishop. Instead of moving his bishop, now he centralizes his knight, a really pretty decent outpost. A knight on the 4th rank can either play really strong offense or defense. A knight in the center on the 4th rank, that is really quite a powerful knight. That's a good piece. Not as effective. Botvinnik's knight is kind of away from the action, even though it is developed. But that's a good piece. There is some really interesting stuff going on here. Queen's going to drop back down to c6. He's virtually forced to react instead of taking this because his queen was challenged, right? And now watch what he does. Whoop. Is that the right one? Where's the other bishop? No, he attacks the pawn chain. Bishop takes d6. He's going for the pawn chain. And that's where Botvinnik resigned. The idea here was Botvinnik just could not stop the debacle. If he comes to here, then he comes to here. The queen still cannot get into this game. The queen can still not do this. This pawn is betraying his rook, so to speak. He still has an undeveloped rook. Yeah, I suppose the queen could drop down here and take that, but so what? It's really not going to help him much. We can trade him down, although that's probably, I'm just looking at this real quick, that's probably not what Khan would have done by any means. Anyway, the attack's going to come on. He could also push this pawn further, open things up for him. But so that's a pretty good look at this Gioco piano opening. And there's several games you can find in the various books. I know there's several games in Horowitz's book. There's several games in Tartakower's 500 Master Games of Chess that show the Gioco piano. The next opening that I want to use and show you, and I'm probably going to do some pretty extensive analysis of this. It's probably going to take me a little while to put it together. I'll probably have that several videos for you throughout the next couple of weeks. I'm going to do more of an extensive analysis on this next opening than I did on the Gioco piano. I just want you to be aware of it. It's a decent opening. The next opening I believe I'm going to do is either going to be the Ruy Lopez, which is huge. It's old also, the Spanish. Or I might do the Queen Gambit. Actually, the King Gambit is also beginning to make a play back into the games and the tournaments. And it has some tactical dynamite. I might just tinker with the King's Gambit. I was just reading today in a recent book published. Can't remember what book it was, but the guy said to study the King Gambit for 4 solid hours to really get the feel for the tactical richness. Yeah, we'll see. So anyway, that's where I'm trying to head with this. So Have fun studying these. Learn well, and I will see you in the next video.